Well, hi guys, and welcome back to Valor and Virtue. Thank you so much for coming back. If you haven't been here before, my name is Erin. This is my husband, Mark, and our mission is to help men, women, and married couples pursue a life of moral, physical, and spiritual excellence. And so, really, that's our mission with this channel. The last week and over the next couple weeks, we're kind of just giving you our story and where we come from. And last week we went over the first 2 years of our marriage. This week we're going to go over the next 2-3 years of our marriage, and we're going to try and be a little bit faster this time. Last time I talked a lot. And then next week, the last episode of that will be the last 2 years of our marriage, which has kind of been the biggest growing point of our marriage.
Yep.
But I'm first and foremost, I'm going to let you recap kind of last week quickly.
Okay.
And then I'm going to let him jump into the first part of this, because really the third year of our marriage was his first year of being a police officer. So I'm going to kind of let you take over for a little bit.
Okay. Yeah. Recap of last week, the first 2 years of our marriage. Got married, 4 days later, deployed to the Middle East for a year. So our entire first year was apart. Came back. We were together for about 5 or 6 months, and then I started the police academy. That was 7 months long. And that was really it. And we didn't see each other much in that year either, because I was gone so much for the police academy. So the first 2 years we saw each other very little. We had a lot of baggage that we didn't get cleaned up in those first 2 years that carried over, which made things harder later on. And that's the main reason we're talking about this stuff, because we've been through a lot. We're still not perfect. We still have a lot of problems. We had a rough week this week, actually, but we have a lot of things that we can share that we think will help you guys out, because we've experienced a lot of things. So next 2 years of our marriage, I had just graduated the police academy, and that was going straight from the police academy, where we didn't see each other much, into on-the-job training, or OJT, which was 4 months long, where my schedule changed every single month. I went from day shift to night shift, which we call graveyard here. Day shift, graveyard shift, swing yard shift. Swing yard
to middle ground. Sorry, that's funny to me.
So always changing schedules. And then finally, after the first four months, then I started my actual patrol work, and I went straight into graveyard shift, of course.
Graveyard, right?
Most new guys go straight into graveyard, yeah, because the old guys don't like it.
And can I jump in real fast?
Mm-hmm.
We never really saw each other, because at that time I owned a CrossFit gym. And so I was at the gym from sometimes 6 in the morning until 6 in the evening. And then he would go, do you remember what you were?
At first I worked 8 at night to 8 in the morning.
Okay.
And then I worked 6 at night to 4 in the morning.
So we never saw each other.
Yeah. Coming right out of a deployment at police academy, it was right into a job where we don't see each other much.
I don't even think we had weekends off together.
No. So just the schedule itself was hard. And the job itself was difficult too. And for anyone in law enforcement who's been in law enforcement, they can relate to this, but it's not an easy job. It is fun sometimes, but sometimes it's actually really, really hard. On my first day of OJT, my very first call,
That's awful.
5 minutes into the job, was a suicide by gunshot. I'm not going to go into details on here, but it was a really rude wake-up call to the job. It wasn't the exciting, first day that I expected it to be. It was a very traumatic, sad first day. And I remember coming home that first night, and I cried to Erin about it because of what I saw the families go through that day. It was really traumatic.
Well, and it was traumatic on the emotional side of what you dealt with, but also the visual side. Sometimes I think we forget, people are oh, I can't imagine emotionally what they go through, but when you see some of the things that they see, you can't unsee it.
Yeah.
It can't be unseen. And I know it may not take as great of a toll as the emotional stuff, but it still matters. And we'll talk about this later, but the only reason I can relate a little bit is because I worked in an emergency department in the ER for 3 years, and like I saw things, like you see things in an emergency room and it just kind of sticks with you. But yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, like you said, the visual stuff. Those images I'll never have out of my head. At least, I don't know. Hopefully someday I will, but I still don't. I can still see very vividly what it looked like walking into the house and seeing what I saw inside. So, with the baggage we have for the first 2 years, carrying into a job where we had no time together, to carrying the burdens of the things that I saw and dealt with on the job, the next 2 years, the first 2 years of me being in the police department was pretty challenging. I can think of a ton of different calls and stuff that I had that were weighed on me heavily. Another one being, we had a situation where a drunk guy started beating his girlfriend or wife, I don't remember, but he basically took their infant daughter and held her captive with a knife. And
wasn't it on a balcony?
Yeah, it was on a balcony, and there's like 15 of us officers there. I had the beanbag shotgun. That's what I had deployed with, and I remember he had the infant in one arm and the knife to her in the other arm, and he's completely drunk. He's yelling at us and he's screaming at us. And people say time slows down when you're stressed, and it does. And in that case, it was really bad because it felt like I was in that situation for hours. It was horrible. It was exhausting. It probably only, I don't know, 30-minute long encounter, but it felt like hours.
Well, and didn't you have to like make the decision?
Yeah, so he started walking towards us on this balcony. The edge of the balcony is on his left side. He's holding the baby in the left arm. So the baby is right next to the railing. It's a drop off for 2 or 3 stories up, and he's got the knife in his right arm. And he starts walking towards us, and he gets within 10 feet of us with the knife, and I had the beanbag, which, if you don't know what that is, it's a shotgun that shoots out literally a beanbag about this size, and it really, really hurts.
The goal with that is to not use deadly force.
Right. It's supposed to hurt somebody so they stop the action, but you're not going to kill them. So that's the point of it. But anyway, he got within 10 feet of us, and I chose not to shoot him with the beanbag because I was really afraid he would drop the baby over the balcony.
And I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but like that's something he would have to live with forever.
Yeah.
Like if that was the outcome, he would have to live with the thought of, is it my fault that baby fell off the balcony?
Yeah.
So like just for some perspective of.
Yeah, so this is going on. He gets within 10 feet of us with a knife, which normally, if somebody gets within 10 feet of you with a knife as a police officer, you shoot him. That's considered a lethal situation. But anyway, I did not, because of the situation I was in where he had the baby in one arm. Thankfully, he didn't get any closer. He backed up, went back into his apartment, and long story short, we were able to eventually get him out, and we were able to get the baby, and it turned out okay. But in the debrief after that call, I remember there was this one supervisor who really laid into me for not beanbagging the guy because, like I said, somebody gets within 10 feet of you with a knife, normally you're supposed to engage that person, but I chose not to. And in front of everybody, all the other officers that were there at the debrief, he really ripped me a new one for it. And I was completely emotionally burned out after that, exhausted. That was a really, really hard call, really stressful. The whole time I pictured a baby falling off the balcony, or him hurting the baby with a knife, or us shooting him. It was a really, really stressful situation. I remember walking my car afterwards, getting in my unit, which we call our cars here units, sat down, just needed a breather, and not 2 minutes later, another Priority 1 call comes out. And I was like, really? Like, no time to decompress after what just happened.
Excuse me.
And I go take another Priority 1 call. But I remember coming home after that one also and crying to Aaron about that one too, because it was such a stressful situation where I thought I was going to see a baby get hurt. And I also struggled a lot with self-doubt of, should I have beanbagged him? Did I put myself and all these other officers in danger unnecessarily? So there's a lot of self-doubt, and it took weeks for me to mentally work through that.
Yeah.
And eventually I came to the conclusion, I realized one day, no, I'm not the only one who didn't pull the trigger. No one else did either.
Yeah, you weren't alone. It's not like he was
Yeah.
by himself on the call.
There's like 15 other cops there. No one else pulled the trigger either. So obviously, everyone has sort of similar feelings that I did. I mean, that's neither here nor there. My point is that in those first couple of years, we dealt with a lot of emotional situations.
Yeah.
And was that when we started counseling or no?
I don't remember. No, not yet. But also, I just thought of this. I just realized this as well in that year. So while he was deployed the first time, while he was gone, I got my EMT basic. And then you graduated the academy, and I went back to school to get my intermediate EMT.
Mm-hmm.
So I was owning the gym, like by myself. You were new cop, and then I was going to school full time to get my EMT intermediate. I forgot about that.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
we were doing all of that at the same time. Sorry, getting over a cold. Sorry, I'm not trying to like all the time. But so we had a lot of stressors on our plate because he was working 12-hour shifts. Or
At first I was.
At
Then I went to 10s.
okay. So 10 to 12-hour shifts. I was doing the gym, which was basically all day, every day. And then I was also in school, and then while I was in school, I also had clinicals, and my clinicals were 12-hour shifts.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, sometimes I'd be on a night shift doing my clinicals, and he would be on it. Like, it was chaos.
Yeah.
Now that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, and then combine that with whenever you do work graves, anyone who has, your circadian cycle is all thrown off. You know, in the daytime, you're exhausted. Your body is not made to work like that. So just the exhaustion, adds to it. But anyway, this is when things in our marriage started getting difficult. That's when the tensions really started to rise. I don't think we started counseling yet at this point.
No, because I think we were still in the old house. But I think that's something to take away too, is like we were like, oh, like we're young, we don't have kids, we want to get a bunch of stuff done, we want to like be hard chargers, which I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. But I think if we would have maybe slowed down first and thought about the reality of what that would look like. Because it's kind of like, for me, it was like, well, yeah, like, when else am I going to go back to school and get this? But it wasn't thinking about basically us having 4 jobs.
No.
Because you're a police officer, and you also had your duties with the guard still.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he was still doing that. And you still had to go, like, every other weekend or every weekend.
Yeah, so something we haven't mentioned yet. On the guard side, I'm a pilot. I fly Blackhawks. So that's not just 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year, like a traditional guardsman. We have flight hours we have to maintain, so I'm flying usually at least once a week.
I was going to say once a week.
And where I fly out of is an hour drive away, so you have to commute to that on top of a full-time job. So that also takes up a lot of time.
Yeah, so you had 2 jobs, and then I had 2 jobs, because, school was basically a job.
Mm-hmm.
And I only went to school on the weekends, thankfully, that's why I was able to do it and still have the gym. But then, like I said, once we got into our clinical phase, like, those were just whenever they were handed to you. So it got chaotic.
Yeah. So say all that to say that we were really busy. There's a lot going on. We didn't have good time management.
No.
And tensions always started to rise. And the baggage we'd already carried into it from the first 2 years just compounded. And that's when we really started arguing a lot. There's a lot of tension, a lot of stress at home. And if you have a stressful job, to come home to a stressful home life, it never gets better. It continues to get worse and worse and worse and worse. And brushing those things on the road don't help. And eventually at some point we started going to counseling.
Yeah, I think it just got to the point where, because like we just almost couldn't figure out how to be there for each other. Because like he would deal with, like at first, because I was just in school and I wasn't doing clinicals, like when he would come home and have a really bad day, I felt like I could stop and listen to him and like just listen, like not have an answer, but just listen. But then when I started going to clinicals, like if I saw something or dealt with something that I didn't know how to process, and he also had the same thing in the same day, like we just wouldn't talk about it.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't like process it. So we're having all these outside filters essentially but then we don't want to put that burden, like I didn't want to put that on him, and then he didn't want to put it on me. Like, you know, like I remember I had a shift where like I just watched some lady like die in front of me, you know, like I was doing CPR on her, and just like things, again, I won't get into detail, but things that for me, like, yeah, you know, going into the medical field, those are going to happen, but until it happens that first time, I feel like it's the same thing with being a cop. Like, you know, you're going to see things, but I remember I came home and I just felt like I couldn't even like talk to him about it, because he had just got off a 12-hour shift and I didn't know what he had seen, and like we almost just didn't talk. And when we did talk, we fought.
Yeah.
Like that's what it felt like looking back.
That's what it felt like to me too.
Like, yeah, there was no like, it would be a quick like, oh, how's your day? Good, good. Yeah, you want to watch some TV? Okay. We'd like sit down and turn the TV on.
Yeah.
Like there was no communication. And then, because no one's needs were being met, when we did talk, we just exploded. Like, over the dumbest stuff looking back.
Yeah, and a lot of that was my fault, but I don't know. I think counseling was the beginning of turning things around, and it wasn't quick.
No.
We did counseling for years, several years.
2 or 3 years total.
Yeah.
It wasn't straight. We took a break in between, but I do remember we got into like this massive fight, and like knockdown, drag out fight, and
Not literally.
not literally. That's just, anyway, not literally. And he came to me and he was like, we need to go to counseling. And I said, no. I said, I'm not doing it. And I was super against it because I had done premarital counseling in my first marriage. And then we did counseling to try and save our marriage. And it didn't work. My marriage ended. And so in my head, marriage counseling didn't work. It was a waste of time. It was a waste of money. And I was embarrassed that I did all that counseling and my marriage still failed. So when he brought it up, I was like, nope. Like, I'm not doing it. Like, I literally put my foot down.
Mm-hmm.
I said I wasn't doing it.
And then I threatened to do it by myself. It wasn't a threat, I meant it.
Yeah, you meant it. It wasn't like an ugly threat. Like, he was like, but he knows that I don't, I'm, not competitive is the right word, but if he's like, well, I'm going to do it by myself, and I'm like, well, no, you're not. Like, I'm going to do it by myself. Like, and then it's like, well, we might as well do it together. Like, that's how I keep smiling at me.
True.
Because I'm like wildly competitive in anything. So when he was like, well, fine, I'm going by myself. And
And I'm not competitive.
No.
Really.
Not at all.
I'm pretty relaxed, actually.
I try all the time. I'm like, oh, run up, beat you up the stairs. And he's like, no. Like, why are we racing? Why? Anyway, but, so yeah, he said he was going to go by himself. And I was like, the heck you are. Like, I'm going to go by myself. And then we just ended up deciding to go together. But something that was really important to us was that we found a Christian counselor because of our beliefs. And so I think it's key, if you are a Christian, you need a Christian counselor, especially when it comes to marriage, because you know that their beliefs are going to line up with your beliefs. And I remember our pastor did a sermon on it, talking about why it was so important, if you are a Christian and believe that, to find a Christian counselor, because you want the person being your third party having the same viewpoints about your core values as you.
Specifically that divorce is not an option.
Right. And obviously I'm not saying it's not an option. I've been divorced.
Well, it's not. If going by what we believe, it's not an option, with the exception of, adultery in the marriage, or obviously, abuse. Yeah.
Yeah. But for us, it's not an option. I guess I'm saying it's not off the table for specific situations. But for us, it was not an option. So
yeah. And you want a counselor who agrees with you on that.
Right. Yeah, we didn't want a counselor that would be like, oh yeah, this sounds really bad. You guys should just call it.
Yeah.
So we found a counselor and we started going once a week.
Yeah. Yeah.
Once
it's
a week.
Expensive. So.
And it was hard. Yeah, that's the thing. It was definitely a sacrifice. We didn't have a lot of money. We were just pretty much living off of your money. The gym made some money, but I always tried to put it back into the gym. We tried not to really live off of it. And it was a sacrifice. Like, it was a sacrifice financially. Obviously, it was a sacrifice of our time, and it was really hard finding time because of our work schedule and shift work and all that stuff.
A lot of times you just don't want to do it either.
Yeah, like, you don't want to go and talk to somebody about all your problems.
Yeah.
But yeah, we chose to make it work because at one point, because like I said, after school, I started working at the hospital, which was like the 4th year of our marriage. And when you start, like, I was gonna work part-time, but when you start, you have to work full-time, just like for your training. So I was working full-time at the hospital, owning the gym, and then you were working full-time for the department and doing guard stuff. But we still made counseling work.
Yeah.
So, not to be a bubble burster, but like, there's no room for your excuse. If your marriage is struggling and you really care and you want to make it work, you can make it work.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, if we had not done counseling, it would not have gotten better. Yeah.
Yeah, it would have been that situation where you're like, oh, those people just seem miserable together. Like, why don't they get a divorce? Because they seem happier apart. And I think something that we learned in those 2 years was that marriage is work. And like, you hear that said often, and older people would tell me that all the time. And you know, like, my parents would always tell me, like, you have to choose to love your spouse every day. Like, it's a choice. It's not just a feeling that you're gonna have every day. And I was like, okay, whatever. Like, you know, in the beginning, you're so in love and like the emotions are there. But really, that was something that I think we both really learned, was that if you want a great marriage, you have to work for it.
Yeah.
Like, you have to work for it. Like anything else. Like, you're not just going to be great at your job all the time, or you're not just going to be a great parent. Like, it's pretty rare that someone is just great at something.
Yeah.
Like, the greats put in the discipline and the work. Like, even in sports. You know, like, yeah, they might have natural talent. Yeah, you might be wildly in love with your spouse, but you don't become great until you start putting in the discipline and the work. And so we found that to ring true in our marriage. So when we started being disciplined with our quality time, like, sometimes we'd even schedule it.
Yeah.
And I'm just gonna say it, like, sometimes we would even schedule like physical time together because life was crazy, and that's an important part of marriage.
Yeah.
And
that's something we were taught in counseling.
Yeah, and it sucked. Like, I was like, that's dumb. Like,
it's weird at first to schedule intimacy, but if it's not happening, then you gotta do it. And obviously, most guys are gonna agree with me, like, don't mind that much. But
let's schedule time. Let's go.
Oh, it's time. We agreed.
You said it's on the calendar.
No, but it is weird at first because it's something that you want to be natural, tend to just happen. But life's not always a movie, and it doesn't always just
Wish
happen.
it was.
Yeah. So.
But that's part of like the intentional work, like the intentionality of the discipline behind taking care of your marriage. Like, and for a long time, like, I didn't see the importance of like a date night or like a date day or like time together because we didn't have kids yet. And I was like, oh, like, we're together all the time. And he was like, we need a date.
Yeah.
We argue. I feel really bad now.
For a lot of guys, you know, physical intimacy is obviously, if not number one, it's one of the top, you know, 2 or 3 needs. But also, time together, have fun is a huge, big deal for men. Time to enjoy time together. And if you guys can hear our 3-year-old yelling in the background, I apologize. He just got home. Sounds like he's wrestling.
Our babysitter's downstairs, and I just heard like, rah!
So.
Sorry.
I lost my train of thought. I don't want to.
You were saying that physical intimacy is at least top thing, or the top 3 things, and then like adventures together.
Yeah, adventure is just fun. Spending time together. For guys, for me anyway, just being with her is not enough. Obviously that's important, but going out and experiencing a life together, that's what fills my needs. Yeah,
so we became very intentional, and we literally took time to schedule everything. So we scheduled dates, we scheduled intimacy, we scheduled quality time. Like, for me, number 1 is quality time. If you just sit down with me nothing else going on, no TV, no phones, no sound, and you just look me in the eye and talk to me for 5 minutes, like my cup is full. I'm like the happiest person on the planet. But we had to schedule those things.
Mm-hmm.
And like we said at first, like it was annoying. Like, cause it felt like we were failing.
Mm-hmm.
Like that we were such a failure in our marriage that we had to schedule what should come naturally. But the more we went to counseling and the more we talked to her, the more she was like, this is pretty normal. Like, it takes work. And when you get, I think in marriage it ebbs and flows. I think you're going to have periods where it doesn't take as much work. And then a season of life happens and you have to work.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't take as much work. And I think you just have to be, we said this last time, I think you really have to be aware of what season you're in your life, in your marriage together.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then things started to get better. It seemed like with counseling, and then I finally started working PRN at the hospital, which took a lot of weight off of how much I was gone. So I think that helped a bit.
Yeah, I think we reached the end of the second 2 years of our marriage.
Yeah, well, we did get pregnant with Ryder.
That's right. We did get pregnant. That was near the end of the middle 2 years of our marriage.
Like year 4.
Yeah, and then we'll talk about that.
Yeah, we'll talk about that next time. That's a long story in and of itself because we kind of had a little bit of a relapse. So we'll talk about that next time. But really, like, I think some of the biggest takeaways are if you're struggling, don't be me and be too proud to go to counseling.
Yeah, do it.
Like,
and don't expect it to work immediately either.
oh no,
It takes weeks and months.
Potentially years.
Yeah, of continuous effort. And it costs money. I mean, for us here with our insurance here, it's $30 a visit. $30 an hour, which when you're living off of cop salary, at least brand new cop salary,
it was rough.
It was hard to fit in. So, but I say that to say that it's worth it in the long run if you stick with it and if you actually put effort into it and you apply what you learn.
Yeah, having that third party person to be just a mutual voice of like not picking sides and helping both of you see each other's point of view, bring clarity to the situation, and give you tools and tactics that if you actually put into place will make your marriage better is worth it. And think about it like, you know, if you weren't a mechanic, you wouldn't try and fix your car yourself, right? Like you would take it to a mechanic, you would listen to what they have to say. If it was something you could do yourself and they gave you the tools, you would do it, right? But like most of us aren't marriage counselors by trade. So like put yourself in front of someone that can help you heal, grow, move forward, and bring progress. And try to do it before you hit rock bottom.
Yeah.
Because,
we waited too long.
Yeah, we waited. And that was on me. We waited way too long. We took way too much time. And digging out from the bottom just takes a lot longer than if you're only a few steps down.
Yep. All right, well, I hear our 3-year-old trying to get in the room, so
we will let you guys go. But we just want to say thank you so much for watching. We really appreciate you. As always, we hope you have a good... Okay, buddy.
Hold on, buddy.
We hope you have a good day, week, morning, night, whatever, whenever you're watching this. And if you can, please like, subscribe, and share. And we'll talk to you next time. Bye.
Bye.